What a week it's been, huh? I mean, it's what, Wednesday? And I feel like I don't even know, folks. I applaud yourselves for making it this far because every day feels like we are living. Is it dog years? Is it cat years? I don't know which one is longer, but I feel insane. And I know that you all do too. We are now, thanks to Republicans, in a government shutdown. If you recall, the last government shutdown happened under, what's his name? Donald Trump's first term. And how long did that government shutdown last? A month. But this time is going to be different than the last time, just as his first term is different than this second term. And I'll explain all of this right now. Welcome to the Danielle Moodie Show, dear friends. I'm so glad that you all are here. Deep breaths, buckle up. Let's get into it. Folks already asked me, how was the dirty martini? It was fantastic. It was fantastic. Just like I say, look, we all need to find positive ways, healthy ways to cope. But every once in a while, I'm just like, you know what? Fuck it. Today's been too hard. And, ain't nobody telling you to drink a bucket of them, but one solid one goes a long way. So today, where do we get started in this hellscape that we call the American project? With the government shutdown. So Republicans say Democrats want to give health care to illegal immigrants. Well, here are the facts. And I appreciate Time Magazine that is offering the facts because everyone else likes to run with the lie, which is what people hear first and then follow it up with, And so here are the facts. Almost immediately after the government shutdown began on Wednesday, the Trump administration filled the airwaves to spread a narrative that Democrats caused the gridlock by demanding free health care for, quote, illegal aliens. The shutdown came after the two parties failed to reach a resolution to a standoff over spending and healthcare policy, resulting in widespread furloughs of federal workers and of the shutdown of numerous federal agencies. So what's the truth? Well, this is the truth. The Trump administration's central narrative is false, or like I like to use this very old-fashioned word, a fucking lie. Although it is true that the Democratic leadership is pushing back on the Republican spending plan, the Democratic response does not include a demand for health care for immigrants without legal status. It does include a demand for Medicaid funding that was severely cut in Trump's big bullshit bill passed earlier this year, as well as funding for the Affordable Care Act. So here is the lie. That the Republicans are out on, in their echo chamber, drilling down on, is that they're saying, look, we wanted to pass a clean CR, right? A clean continuing resolution. And that would just maintain the levels of government funding. We're not asking for anything new. And so this articulation is, in fact, a lie. Because to maintain the current spending levels, Democrats would have to go along with the obscenely disgusting cuts to social safety nets that were done in the big billionaire budget bill. They would have to go along with those cuts. And then what would happen? Millions of people are going to lose their Medicaid. Millions of people are going to lose their health care. Millions of people are going to lose their SNAP benefits, et cetera, et cetera. And what is the reasoning for this? The reasoning for all of this is to ensure, right, that the billionaire class receive their tax breaks. And how are those tax breaks being funded? They're being funded literally off of the backs of the poor. And so, no, it was not a clean CR as Mike Johnson is going on television and spouting his lies about. No, it would be Democrats needing to go along with these obscene and disgusting and depraved cuts to the social safety nets that people literally need to survive in order to make sure that the billionaire class gets more tax breaks. And it's just bullshit. But, here's Mike Johnson. There are so many names that go through my head when I see him, so I have to stall and actually say his real name. Mike Johnson is on Good Morning America with Stephanopoulos. If you remember, right? Like Stephanopoulos should not be a fan of this administration whatsoever because, it was his network, the ABC, that paid Donald Trump $16 million for things that he said that were actually true. He called Donald Trump a adjudicated rapist, which is in fact the legal term for what he is. Nonetheless, Stephanopoulos asked Mike Johnson, to clarify the Republican stance on the reason why they're okay with the government shutting down.
The Democratic proposal is designed to prevent millions of Americans from losing their health insurance, losing Medicaid coverage, or paying higher health care premiums. Why are you against that?
That's an absurd statement, what you said there. Let's be clear about what happened last night, George. No, George, let me tell you what happened last night. Everybody can go and review the facts for themselves. 44 Senate Democrats voted to reject a clean, nonpartisan continuing funding resolution to keep the United States government open. The Democrats said instead that they wanted to give health care to illegal aliens instead of keeping critical services provided for the American citizens. That's what happened, plain and simple. Every Democrat in the House, except one, voted against the clean continuing resolution. It was nonpartisan in nature. There are no policy riders on it that Republicans favored. It's exactly what Chuck Schumer and other Democrats voted for in March. But they've changed their tune. They changed their tune because Chuck Schumer is having political problems right now. That's just a simple fact, and everybody knows it. He's trying to outrun the far left portion of his base, so he's decided to inflict pain on the American people.
That's
facts.
The reality of what we're facing. Here are the facts. The proposal does not provide health care for illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants cannot buy health care under the Affordable Care Act. They cannot receive health care subsidies. No. Illegal immigrants are ineligible for Medicare, Medicaid, and the Children's Health Program. The Democratic bill does not make them eligible.
So he's like, okay, you can come on here and spout your bullshit, which again, this is what the media has been doing, corporate mainstream media, for the longest time. Here, come on to this show, spout this bullshit. But praise be, somebody found their spine and said, let me fact check him in real time, because we know that he's coming on to talk about the government shutdown. We know what the Republicans' talking points have been on this shutdown, that they're trying to. The government shutdown happened because of Democrats, but they control the executive branch. They control both houses of Congress, but somehow this is Democrats' faults. And so, again, this is how you fact check in real fucking time. It should be light work at this point, but bravo. And so here's Jamie Raskin. Congressman Jamie Raskin comes out and he does what he does very well, which is connect the dots about why this government shutdown is actually happening and what he plans to do when they finally get back to work.
And complete accountability. We ask for nothing there more than Donald Trump asked for, than Kash Patel asked for, than Pam Bondi asked for. They all said they wanted them released. Then they had 1,000 FBI agents working around the clock. And guess what they saw? Donald Trump's name apparently all over the files, and they came back and said, nothing to see here. We're going to sweep it under the rug, call off the talking points, everybody. Now we want to cover up the Epstein files. We're not going to allow them to do that. When we get back to work, we're going to reopen the government. We are going to resume health care for the American people, and we're going to release the Epstein files.
Because you have to remember, friends, that all of this is, in fact, while it's dangerous, right? While it's going to cost people their health care, which means ultimately going to cost them their lives, why this is a problem, it's also a distraction. All of it. The fucking propaganda campaign that happened in front of our top military brass, the dissemination of troops all into blue cities, right? Now Donald Trump is withholding $18 billion from New York City as retribution, right? For the fact that Hakeem Jeffries and AOC and others and Chuck Schumer are like, we're not going along with your bullshit bill. Like, we're not doing this, and this shutdown is going to be on you. However, this is what I actually want to get to the bottom of for all of you. Because nothing that Republicans do is by accident. There's always a reason behind it. So when all of the Democrats showed up for work yesterday in the House chamber, and none of the Republicans showed up, it was very clear that they're not interested in not shutting the government down, because they have the ability, right, to not shut the government down. So you get to thinking, who benefits if the government shuts down? What is it that they're really trying to do? Take a listen.
I mean, estimate for us. Give us some ballpark numbers here. We've already had some sizable reductions in force. Actually, there's a number 300,000 floating around for this calendar year. That may or may not be the right number, but that number is floating around. Now, if there's a budget shutdown, as our own chat program suggested, almost ineluctably will be a budget shutdown, then you have the authority to reduce the federal employee count by roughly how much?
Well, I'm going to let that those kinds of questions extend until tomorrow and the days after. Right now, where we are, we have hours to go before a government shutdown, and it can be avoided. And then we'll get in tomorrow. The preparation is all done. We have many options, but we're going to get in tomorrow and see where we are, and we're going to manage this shutdown and try to keep the American people from the havoc that the Democrats have caused on with their crazy demands. But let it be said, there are all manner of authorities to be able to keep this administration's policy agenda moving forward, and that includes reducing the size and scope of the federal government, and we will be looking for opportunities to do that.
There you have it. Ding, ding, ding. The government shutdown is a ruse so that they can continue along with what Elon Musk started with Doge. They want to finish the hit job that they began with the mass firings of federal workers. They are going to absolutely destroy the federal government, or what's left of it, because if we're honest with ourselves, we haven't had a working, efficient government for the last 8 months since Donald Trump became president, since Elon Musk was dancing on a stage high as out of his fucking mind with a chainsaw. They have fired tens of thousands of workers, and now they're going to fire hundreds of thousands of workers. They are going to bring this government to a grinding halt so that Donald Trump and his donors can finish the hit job. You're not going to get your mail, be able to go to parks, because I think that what's going to happen, because you know that the national parks will close and all of these things, because I believe, they wanted to sell those lands, our beautiful, pristine national parks. Well, there was also bills that included the decimation and the privatization of those parks so that they could literally strip it for lumber, dig for oil, get whatever resources out of them, right? And so if no one is working there, if no one's around to see it happening, well, then you can do whatever the fuck you want. That goes for our parks and public lands. It goes for pretty much everything. The last government shutdown lasted for 34 days. And that was during Donald Trump's first term. The only reason why the government reopened was because air traffic controllers decided and announced that they were going to go on strike. If we have no one, right, that is managing, like we've seen what happened at Newark, at DCA, you know, when the other reality TV star took over the office of the agency, right? The transportation agency, when Sean Duffy took over, and we were watching these planes like literally almost collide. Yeah, those jobs are wildly important. And the only reason why the federal government came back in 2018 was because they said, we're not going to work. Because what you're demanding from federal employees is that they show up for work for weeks on end without getting paid. Let me tell you something. As somebody that worked on Capitol Hill, as somebody that has worked in nonprofit organizations, that has worked at think tanks, they don't pay, right? They don't pay. And so folks missing 1, 2, 3 paychecks, you're talking about not being able to pay your mortgage, to pay your rent, to get your basic needs met. Now, when you're supposed to, when furloughed, get that back pay. But we're talking about people who don't make a lot of money to begin with. But you know what is going to continue moving forward? Donald Trump's $200 million gaudy fucking ballroom. Oh, he announced today. Oh, construction on that will be continuing because he doesn't pay construction workers anyway. You know who else gets paid in government shutdowns? Congress, the very people that shut down the fucking government, the president, the vice president. So they all get paid to literally not work. It's wild. It's wild. But you know who doesn't get paid? Our military. You know, the people that he insulted yesterday. They don't get paid. TSA workers, you know, who make sure that flights are all good to go and, you know, no one's carrying anything. They don't get paid. But Donald Trump's gaudy ass ballroom, that still get built and he'll still cash a check. It is disgusting. It is obscene. But this is wrapped around the fucking neck of the Republican Party. Democrats don't own this at all. Of course, they'll fail at the messaging. And of course, at some point, they'll capitulate because that's what they're good at. But I, for one, think that you ride this fucking shit out until people are banging down the door of the White House. Just saying. Another thing that folks aren't talking about today because they're talking about the government shutdown, new jobs numbers came out. They're fucking abysmal. The U.S. economy lost 32,000 private sector jobs in September. 32,000. Private payrolls plunged in September, complicating the picture for the U.S. economy as policymakers and investors struggle to assess the state of the labor market amid a government shutdown, because these numbers came out before the shutdown. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is unlikely to release the monthly jobs report this Friday due to the closure, because ain't nobody going to be there. Isn't that convenient as well? That means many flying blind without critical economic data are having to key into an information they can't get, including Wednesday's private sector jobs data from payroll company ADP. U.S. private sector businesses lost 32,000 jobs in September, according to the report. August, right, previously estimated at 54,000 payroll gains, were downwardly revised to negative 3,000. Folks, how do you go from, and apologies for the bell, how do you go from a report that says in August, the private sector gained 54,000 jobs, to now the revision stating that actually not only did it not gain 54,000 jobs, it gained no jobs and it lost 3,000. But if you notice, this is not the frontline story. And why is that? Because of the government shutdown. We're not going to learn the state of the economy because guess who's been furloughed? You see how these things work together in order for Donald Trump to continue to hide the fact that he is incompetent and destroying our economy, all for his own benefit? Because, mind you, his family, they've increased their finance portfolio to about $5 billion thanks to their meme coin and their grift of cryptocurrency. You see, for crypto, it works really well when the dollar is weakened. Well, good thing Donald Trump is in office, because the dollar has lost 11% of its value since he came into office. All of this is not spelling recession, dear friends. Y'all need to start preparing for a depression, because not only are hundreds of thousands of people about to lose their jobs in the federal government, and that touches every single state. That is not just about what happens in Washington, D.C. Not only are hundreds of thousands of people about to lose their jobs in the public sector, but in the private sector, you have places like Accenture that over the last 3 months have fired 11,000 people. Now they're saying that firing is happening because, AI. They're going to invest more in AI, and those that can't be upskilled are going to be eliminated. Microsoft has laid off thousands of people. Salesforce has laid off thousands of people. So what happens, right, when no one has any jobs? Tariffs have increased the price of everything. What do you think that spells out to be? Absolute fucking disaster. That's what's happening. That's what Donald Trump is basically hoping to happen. Because if you can create the conditions, folks, I just want to say, if you can create the conditions for desperation, if you can create the conditions for chaos, what ends up happening when people are broke, everything is expensive, you don't have a job, you've lost your health care, you begin to make desperate decisions, which will but reports tell us, increase crime. And then guess who's been yelling about crime in cities and needing the military to stamp out the people? Donald Trump. So as crime increases because you've created the conditions for chaos, and then you bring in your final solution, you see where all of this is headed, dear friends? Because it should be Clear as fucking day.
Review what we got, because as Rick said, very disappointing. It was a weak number. So this is private sector jobs. Total comes in negative 32,000. And that was a surprise because economists were looking for an increase of 51,000. It's the biggest monthly drop since March 2023. Also, the revision was not good. August was revised down sharply. The month now showing, as you can see, or actually can't see, but August goes down to negative 3,000 compared to the initial read of 54,000. There's the August revision. So 2 weak months in a row. If you look, private sector payrolls have now dropped in 3 of the last 4 months, according to ADP. And if you look beneath the surface, you can see where the job losses were. Small and medium-sized businesses saw bigger declines than large businesses, which actually saw job growth. But guys, if you take the report and you compare it, some people say, oh, it's not really correlated with the government jobs report. Well, the reason I think that people are paying attention to it today is, first of all, we're not going to likely get that government jobs report on Friday, but also look at the correlation. I mean, the direction is in the right mode. Like they dip at the same time, they rise at the same time. I think it gives you a good sense, at the very least, of the trend on job growth. This is ADP private sector versus the traditional monthly jobs report that we get on Friday, where the market pays really close attention to. So I think it's a good indication that the labor market is softening and that employers are a little more cautious when it comes to hiring and even paying. Carl, in terms of compensation, job changer pay growth declined 6.6% from 7%.
So do you hear what she said at the very end? That not only is the job market softening and employers are not hiring, even when they do hire, the compensation is 6 to 7% less than what it was the year prior. So, just to connect the dots, Donald Trump is purposefully tanking the economy. Who gains from that are people that have the ability to do these short sells, right? Also, he is weakening the dollar. Who does that benefit? It benefits people who have investments in crypto, like himself and his entire family. Then you flood the market, right, with people who now are clamoring for the same jobs, which gives employers the opportunity to offer less because people are desperate. So they don't have to woo you. You instead have to do a tap dance and a jig to get less than what you're worth because you just need something. So all of this works to benefit the super rich, the ones that Reagan told us would trickle down. They would trickle down the wealth to the rest of us. It goes to the predatory hoarder class that also is in control of the hiring. And the rest of us should just be fucking grateful for the crumbs that they give us. See how this is all working out? A fucking mess. Speaking of mess, God, I still can't wipe not even the dirty martini yesterday could wipe out the taste that I still have in my mouth for the absurdities that we were subjected to yesterday. Rex Hupke, oh God, this op-ed that he did in USA Today, I just had to cut it because the headline alone was just brilliant. Trump, Hegseth show they're small men acting big in front of military leaders. Trump told the gathering that he has seen the enemy, and it is us. We're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy. He writes this: a former Fox News host and a convicted felon who received 5 military deferments during the Vietnam War called about 800 U.S. military leaders from around the globe to a mandatory September 30th meeting in Virginia, then proceeded to call them fat and threaten them with demotions, forced them to listen to criticism of past president and a sitting governor, and told them they would begin using American cities as military training grounds. This wildly expensive meeting that could have been an email came hours before the government is expected to shut down and presented an opportunity for Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, the former TV host who earlier this year shared classified military battle plans in a group text that included a magazine editor, and Donald Trump, the bone spur war avoider, to show the world that they are small, insecure, and frankly, not that bright. No notes. No notes. Trump told the gathering that he has seen the enemy and it is us. We're under invasion from within, no different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. At least they're wearing a uniform. You can take them out. He ends by writing this: raise your hand if you feel great about the U.S. military using American cities as training grounds. You won't see many hands. A recent CBS News YouGov poll found nearly 60% of Americans oppose Trump sending the National Guard into other cities. But what difference does that make? I will tell you that JB Pritzker said all the things that should now be being said and repeated by every single Democrat every single time that they are on television, which is this: Pritzker compares Trump to Putin, calls for invoking the 25th Amendment, for suggesting military use Chicago as training grounds. After Donald Trump on Tuesday suggested cities like Chicago should be used as training grounds for our military, Governor JB Pritzker said the 25th Amendment should be invoked to remove the president from office, saying there is something genuinely wrong with this man. It appears that Donald Trump not only has dementia set in, but he's copying tactics of Vladimir Putin, sending troops into cities thinking that that's some sort of proving ground for war, or that indeed there's some sort of internal war going on in the United States, is just frankly inane, and I'm concerned for his health. There is something genuinely wrong with this man, and the 25th Amendment ought to be invoked. I said this earlier on the check-in with my friend Jared Yates Sexton. If you watch again Donald Trump at that propaganda rally that he tried to hold yesterday with our military leaders, one, it shouldn't have been aired live on television. That's just number one. But, optics, that's all these fucking reality TV show people care about. Nonetheless, did you notice the way that he was standing? How basically he was hunched over the podium, that he was gripping onto it for dear life, like the podium was holding him up, as opposed to a strong, healthy leader that is using the podium right in front of him? Donald Trump was not standing tall and projecting out. He was hunched over to the side, gripping the podium and slurring his words. Now, here's the thing. Donald Trump doesn't drink, right? He's not a drinker. So he's not drunk. So what is the reasoning then that he was slurring his words? Because I was listening yesterday and I'm saying to myself, is it me? Or is Donald Trump sound like his tongue is so fucking heavy in his mouth, and doesn't he look like he is about to pass out? I'm telling you, I don't know what they are shooting this man up with, But this is some weekend at Bernie's bullshit that is happening right now. And I wish that the mainstream corporate media would have as many questions about Donald Trump's fucking health deteriorating right before our eyes as they did Joe Biden. Because I'm telling you, if Joe Biden stood before anyone and his words were slowing, we know what would have happened because we've seen it. We saw it over and over again. That man couldn't trip. He who has a stuttering impediment couldn't stutter a word before there were calls of, we need a doctor's report and we need this and we need that. Donald Trump clearly is showing signs of dementia. I am not a doctor, but I've been around people with dementia. Right? That seemingly like they have moments where they're there, but those moments start to become few and far in between. Remember when Donald Trump just recently was out of the public view for about a week? Also, think about this. Project 2025 was like a 4-year project. It's more than halfway done, and we're 8 months into this administration. They are escalating at rates that make no sense, of course, unless you know that you're running out of time. And you know that there isn't anybody who's going to follow in the footsteps of Donald Trump that has the charisma, that has the attention of MAGA in the way that he does. So you got to get all this shit done and lined up quickly before he, there is so much going on right now. It is like, do you remember the movie? The Oscar award winning movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once? Was that what it was called? I think it was. Something to that effect. I feel like that is where we are. There is just like layers and layers and layers. Nothing is what it seems. It is literally like living inside of a funhouse horror show where you look at one thing, but it's really another thing, and it's really like distorted and fucked up, and that's where we are. That's why we feel so discombobulated, so off kilter, because none of this actually makes any sense. But then when you drill down just a little bit, you realize that all of this, all of Stephen Miller's fascistic wet dreams depend on Donald Trump being healthy and alive in order to execute. Because they're looking around and ain't nobody that's going to fill those tiny shoes. So they escalate. They escalate their rhetoric. They escalate violence. But here's the thing that I want us to remember. All of this is dangerous. All of this is terrifying, and people are going to die. These are true. These are true facts. But what history tells us about these type of regimes, they always crumble and they implode from within, because eventually they're not able to carry the weight of their own bullshit, and they start to turn on one another one by one by one. That's the truth. So is there a little bit of good news that we can wrap up with today? I mean, there's some, I dig for most of it. But here's something. The Supreme Court, the modified, illegitimate Supreme Court that no longer believes in the Constitution or precedent, is allowing Lisa Cook to remain at the Fed for now. The justices deferred a decision on Trump's efforts to oust Cook and instead set oral arguments in the case for January. They declined on Wednesday to allow Trump to immediately remove Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board, saying it would instead review the administration's efforts to oust her and reshape the central bank at oral arguments in January. Top former Fed and Treasury officials and Ms. Cook's legal team had warned the Supreme Court that permitting Trump to fire her while litigation over her status was underway would spur economic turmoil and undermine public confidence in the Fed. While the Supreme Court's conservative majority, MAGA-fied majority, has repeatedly cleared the way for Donald Trump to fire leaders of independent agencies, the justices have recently signaled that the central bank is uniquely independent. In its two-sentence unsigned order on Wednesday, today, the court deferred ruling on Ms. Cook's status until after it heard arguments in the matter in January. The decision to take up the case means the justices will confront at least three testing Mr. Trump's policies in their new term, which begins on Monday. The court is already set to review some of Trump's most sweeping tariffs and his ouster of a leader of the FTC. So this is kind of a mixed bag of good and bad. One, Lisa Cook remains in her position. And remember that last week I shared with you all the list of folks from every administration, except for Trump's first administration, of former Fed chairs, of economic advisors, of Nobel laureates who all said she needs to stay in her job. Right? Like it is imperative that the bank stay separate, right? That this is not a game to be played with. So maybe that played into the decision by this MAGA-fied court that has given Donald Trump the keys to destroy this country from the inside out. You know, again, what do we say always trumps whiteness? The color green. So maybe if Donald Trump really does just finish the hit job in destroying our economy, gutting jobs at the federal level, gutting our institutions, maybe when we're all standing amidst the rubble, the Supreme Court will remember its oath, but I wouldn't hold my breath. And then finally, there is this. The good Pope. He recently came out and made a real distinction on pro-life and abortion. Someone against abortion but in favor of the death penalty is not really pro-life, Pope Leo says. Leo called first of all for the respect for both sides, but he also pointed out the seeming contradiction in such debates. Someone who says I'm against abortion but says I'm in favor of the death penalty is not really pro-life. Someone who says that I'm against abortion but I'm in agreement in the inhumane treatment of immigrants in the United States, I don't know if that's pro-life. Because it's not. The fact is that these people have always wanted us to believe that they are these religious, folks that have just this moral compass that sees all life as life, even if it is a bunch of cells. That is, of course, until you ask them what shade of life they actually give a shit about. Because it's clear that if you think that treating undocumented people, immigrants, as dogs in a kennel is pro-life, then Pope Leo pretty much just called bullshit on all of it. And that's why J.D. Vance hates him, calls him the woke Pope, right? Because, I guess caring about all humanity, right, makes us all woke. Not wanting to see children starve to death and die in Gaza of malnutrition. Not wanting to see people who only come to this country because they want a better life and to contribute be treated like animals or worse than animals. check their bullshit at the door in the eloquent way in which Pope Leo did. You're not pro-life. You're pro-white life. And there's a fucking difference. That is it for me today, dear friends, on the Danielle Moodie Show. Folks, this is independent media, so do take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Help feed the algorithm fairies and get me to 40,000 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of y'all who are showing me such extraordinary love and donations and just your comments that keep me going, especially when the weeks are dark. So thank you to Ernst, Susan, as always, Vivian, Phoebe, my goodness, the generosity. Thank you so very much. Design Chick, thank you so much from Canada. E. Schwartz, as always. Clinton, K. Dub, as always. Susan, again, you're too much. Eternal, DC, Shirley, thank you so much. And Susan, again, I cannot do this work without all of you. And so I appreciate you showing up here, being in community with one another, and those that have the ability to provide some donations. I thank you, thank you, thank you. Every dollar goes to me having the ability to create the kind of content with integrity and passion that you deserve. Folks, I will see you back here tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. Until then, be well. Power to the people and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these extraordinarily dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. I will see you tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern.